Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another video in the NobelWomen series. And I know it's later than usual on the day on Sunday, but I had to wait until the evening to film because it was just too bloody hot. Anyway, my series about NobelWomen, for those of you who have been with me for a while, you know we read one book by a female winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature each month, and then we discuss it on Goodreads. I will leave a link to the Goodreads group down below. There are 3 more books left, but you can still join. There's Alice Munro coming up, and Herta Müller, and Svetlana Alexievich. So it's worthwhile to join now for the last 3. But today, for number 8, we read Doris Lessing, The Sweetest Dream. The Sweetest Dream was published in 2001, and Doris Lessing was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature 6 years later in 2007 when she was almost 90. She was born in 1919 and in Iran, by the way, but she is considered a British author. She lived most of her youth until she was about 30 in what is now Zimbabwe and what was then Rhodesia. And after that, she moved to London and has lived in London ever since until she died. The Sweetest Dream is set mostly in London, in Hampstead, and we follow 2 main female characters, Frances Lennox and her mother-in-law Julia Lennox, who is a German-born, quite rigid, rule-oriented figure. Hey, she's German, right? And Frances is married to Julia's son, Comrade Johnny, as he is referred to in the novel. But Johnny decided to leave Frances and their 2 young sons, Colin and Andrew, in order to pursue communist adventures, traveling, and affairs with other communist comrades. Doris Lessing, when she has been awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature, was mainly lauded for her writing about the female experience. So in many of her books, like in this one, the women are the central figures. And I would say from the 2, Julia, the mother-in-law, and Frances is the main protagonist in the book. Now, the book spans quite some time. It ends when Frances is in her 70s. And we follow the life of Frances and, the sort of liberal / communist friends and colleagues that she has. She dreamt of working for the theater, but then takes a job as a journalist for a liberal newspaper, The Defender. And lots of the book is conversations between Frances and Julia, but also conversation with various friends, Colin and Andrew, when they are getting older and going to middle school. They bring friends over, and it's a quite a mixture of people, and the main focus in the conversation is not only, of course, the family and the dynamics between Julia and Frances and the absent comrade Johnny, who is off to his adventures, but it's also politics and doing good and what do you want to achieve in the world and how do you want to change the world. I mean, it was the 60s after all. I have to say that this is certainly not my favorite Doris Lessing novel. And when I look at the discussions that we have over on Goodreads, it is a bit tedious. I mean, Frances is not an uninteresting protagonist, but there were a lot of times that I just wanted to take her by the shoulders and shake her and get things moving, as it were. Even though the book, really spans quite some time. It felt static often. The conversation revolving around the same subjects over and over again, and there is a good feel for the situation, and many of the dialogues or conversations, because it's mostly more people than just two people, is interesting to read by itself, but over the course of the whole book, it can get, at least for me, it and I think for at least what I saw from the comments on Goodreads for other readers as well, it is a bit tedious. It's not, get on with it. You want to say. Then in the latter part of the book, the last third, we move to Africa and a country that doesn't exist, or at least, I mean, the country exists, but the name she gave it, Doris Lessing gave it, doesn't exist, but it's clear it's meant to be Zimbabwe. And it's the beginning of the AIDS crisis, and after the independence of African states like Zimbabwe, the corruption is addressed, and we follow mainly comrade Johnny's stepdaughter Sylvia, who goes there and works there as a medical helper for the AIDS patients. But it's also one of the sons of Francis gets involved in Africa because he's a financial guy, and he gets involved with organization and institutions funneling money to Africa, in Zimbabwe in particular, and how the politicians there are corrupt. Now, I think that this part of the book is for readers now in 2019, the most controversial. Not because of the AIDS thing, but because of the way the Black African leaders and the corruption there is shown. I think if you just look at it objectively, it certainly gives a valid and true picture of how governments work in some of these states. The problem is that the author is white. And I don't think, maybe at the time that Doris Lessing has written the book, this issue wasn't as much in the discussion as it is now. That you get this a little bit cringy feeling when you read it, that you have this white savior look on African countries. From Sylvia's perspective as, in medicine as a doctor, but also from the perspective of the sons and the discussions that you have, that white people judge Black people and how they run their country. And for me, that was a bit cringeworthy, even though I can see that the issue and the topic that is raised in the book is valid. All in all, for me, it was an okay read. It was there was too little movement for me in the book to really keep me going. And I thought Julia, by the way, was the most interesting character from the females in the book, and Francis was just, yeah, get your act together, get moving. So it is not my favorite Doris Lessing for sure. But for those of you who read along with me, I'm of course interested what you thought of it. So let me know down in the comments. And then on to our read for July. We will read Herta Müller and her novel The Land of Green Plums, which is the English translation of her book written in German called Herztier, published in 1994. And Herta Müller was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature 2 years after Doris Lessing in 2009. Herta Müller was born in Romania, but she left in the 80s and moved to Germany, and she writes in German. So I will read the German original, reread to be precise, Herztier, but there are the English language translation is available, of course, like I said, The Land of Green Plums, like the picture here. So you can read whatever translation you want. And as always, I will make a video on the last Sunday of July to discuss the book. And while we're reading, we can discuss it on Goodreads. So that was it for NobelWomen number 8. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Like I said, talk to me down in the comments about the book or about other books by Doris Lessing that you read, and I will talk to you soon in the next one. Bye-bye.